The stars looked different from the observation deck of the horizon's edge. Captain Jake Morrison stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the swirling colors of the jump gate fade away as his ship emerged into normal space. 3 years. That's how long they had been gone from Earth, surveying distant worlds and marking them for future colonies. 3 years of silence, of isolation, of dreaming about home. Captain, we're receiving standard beacon signals from the outer markers, said Chris Palmer from the navigation station. His voice carried relief. Everyone was ready to go home. Jake nodded but didn't turn away from the window. Something felt wrong. He couldn't explain it, but 30 years in space had taught him to trust his instincts. The Sol system should be bursting with radio chatter by now. Millions of voices talking, broadcasting, living their lives across Earth and its colonies. But his earpiece was quiet. Too quiet. Linda, run a full spectrum scan. Tell me what you're hearing, Jake said. Linda Hayes looked up from her communications console, her fingers already dancing across the controls. She was young, barely 25, but she had the best ears on the ship. If there was a signal out there, she would find it. The seconds ticked by. Her face went pale. Captain, I'm not picking up anything. No civilian broadcasts. No military channels. No traffic control. Nothing on any frequency. The bridge went silent. 847 souls aboard the horizon's edge, and Jake could feel every single one of them holding their breath. Chris spoke first, his voice shaking slightly. Maybe it's equipment failure. We've been in deep space for 3 years. Could be our receivers are damaged. Run a diagnostic, Jake ordered. But he already knew what they would find. The equipment was fine. Something else was very, very wrong. Amy Rodriguez, the ship's science officer, was staring at her screens with wide eyes. Captain, I'm picking up debris fields in high orbit. Lots of them. The patterns are consistent with destroyed satellites and stations. Jake's stomach twisted into a knot. Show me. The main screen flickered to life, displaying what their sensors were detecting. Thousands of objects tumbling through space where Earth's defensive platforms and commercial stations should have been. Some pieces were large enough to identify. Jake recognized the twisted remains of the Armstrong station, where his sister had worked. His hands clenched into fists. Take us in closer. Battle stations. I want every sensor we have pointed at Earth, and I want answers. The next hour felt like a lifetime. As the horizon's edge moved deeper into the Sol system, the picture became clearer and more horrifying with each passing minute. The moon bases were silent. Mars Colony wasn't responding. The asteroid mining operations had gone dark. And Earth, beautiful blue Earth, was wrong. Visual on the planet, Captain, Chris said quietly. Jake looked at the screen and felt his heart break. Earth's continents were visible, but they were scarred. Massive dark patches covered areas where cities should have been. The eastern coast of North America was a blackened ruin. Europe showed similar devastation, Asia, Africa, South America. Everywhere he looked, he saw death. Amy, what am I looking at? The science officer's voice was barely a whisper. High-energy weapons impacts. Plasma bombardment. Some kind of stellar-grade arsenal. Captain, the radiation signatures are off the charts. Whoever did this, they glassed entire cities. How many? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Amy worked her console in silence for several minutes. When she finally spoke, tears were streaming down her face. Based on the thermal signatures and radiation patterns, I estimate 10 billion casualties. Maybe more. The strikes were coordinated. They hit every major population center simultaneously. Captain, Earth had 11.2 billion people. I'm detecting scattered life signs in deep bunkers and remote locations, but most of the planet is gone. 10 billion. The number was too large to comprehend. 10 billion people, just erased from existence. Jake felt his legs weaken, and he grabbed the edge of his command chair for support. Behind him, he heard someone vomiting. Someone else was crying. The bridge dissolved into chaos as his crew processed what they were seeing. Silence, Jake commanded, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. I know what you're feeling. I'm feeling it too. But right now, we need to think. We need to figure out what happened and who's responsible. Linda's console beeped. Captain, I'm picking up a data packet. It's old, maybe 3 weeks. Looks like it was set to broadcast on a loop, waiting for someone to come home and receive it. Play it. The face that appeared on the screen was haggard and covered in soot. Admiral Greg Thompson, commander of Earth's Defense Forces. Jake had met him once at a military function. He looked like he had aged 20 years. To any human ships receiving this message, this is Admiral Thompson of the Earth Defense Command. 3 weeks ago, we were contacted by a species calling themselves the Varkesh Sovereignty. They demanded our complete surrender and incorporation into their empire as a vassal state. When we refused, they demonstrated their response. The Admiral's image was replaced by footage of the attack. Massive alien ships, each one the size of a city, appeared in orbit around Earth. They didn't negotiate. They didn't give warnings. They just opened fire. Beams of pure energy lanced down from the sky, turning cities into glass. Nuclear missiles launched from Earth's defense platforms were swatted aside like insects. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 6 hours. Admiral Thompson's face returned to the screen. They destroyed us because they could. Because we said no. Because they wanted to make an example of what happens to species that resist them. If you're receiving this, you're among the few humans not on Earth when it happened. The Varkesh left a message for any survivors. They'll return in 20 years to claim Earth's resources and whatever population remains. They want slaves, not partners. The Admiral paused, and for a moment his military bearing cracked. Jake saw raw grief and fury in his eyes. To whoever finds this message, you have a choice. You can run, scatter to the far corners of the galaxy and hope they never find you. Or you can fight. I won't be alive to see what you choose. The bunker I'm in is failing and I can feel the radiation sickness setting in. But if there's any justice in this universe, if there's any humanity left, make them pay. Make them regret the day they learned Earth's name. Thompson out. The screen went dark. Jake stood in the silence that followed, feeling the weight of 847 pairs of eyes on him. They were looking to him for answers, for leadership, for hope. He turned to face his crew. Listen to me, all of you. I won't pretend this isn't the worst thing that's ever happened to our species. I won't lie and say everything's going to be okay. 10 billion of our people are dead. Our homeworld is in ruins. We have every right to despair, to give up, to run and hide. He paused, letting his words sink in. But we're not going to do that. We're going to do what humans have always done when someone pushes us down. We're going to get back up. We're going to find every survivor on Earth and in this system. We're going to rebuild. And when we're strong enough, we're going to find the Varkesh Sovereignty. We're going to teach them why you don't mess with humanity. Captain, Chris said carefully, there's 847 of us. They destroyed Earth. How can we possibly fight back? Jake looked at the young man and saw the fear in his eyes. He saw it in everyone's eyes. Good. Fear would keep them sharp. But he also saw something else. Anger. Rage. A burning need for justice that no amount of time or distance could extinguish. I don't know yet, Jake admitted. But we're going to figure it out. Right now, our priority is finding survivors and establishing contact. Linda, keep scanning for signals. Amy, I want a full analysis of the weapons used against Earth. We need to understand what we're up against. Chris, take us to the moon. If anyone made it to the emergency bunkers there, we'll find them. The crew moved with renewed purpose. They had a mission now, something to focus on besides their grief. As they worked, Jake returned to the observation window and stared at the wounded Earth below. 10 billion souls gone in 6 hours. Parents, children, friends, lovers. An entire civilization nearly wiped out because they refused to kneel. He thought about his sister on Armstrong Station, his parents in Seattle, his college friends scattered across the planet. Were any of them alive? Deep down he knew the answer, but he couldn't let himself think about it. Not yet. He had a ship to command and a crew depending on him. I promise you, Jake whispered to the ghosts of 10 billion, we will make this right. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we will have justice. The Varkesh think they broke us. They think destroying Earth was the end of humanity. They're wrong. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in grim silence. They were no longer explorers or scientists or merchants. The moment they saw what had been done to their world, they became something else, something harder. Something dangerous. They became survivors. And survivors, Jake knew, were the most dangerous creatures in the universe, because survivors had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The Varkesh Sovereignty had just made the biggest mistake in their empire's history. They had shown humanity. The lunar surface looked like a graveyard. Jake Morrison guided the horizon's edge into a careful orbit above the Tycho base complex, watching his sensors for any sign of life. The base's main dome was cracked open like an egg exposed to vacuum. 3 other settlements showed similar damage, but the deep bunkers, the ones built into the rock itself, those might have survived. I've got power signatures, Linda said from her station. Faint, but they're there. Someone's alive down there, Captain. Jake felt hope surge through his chest for the first time in days. Open a channel. All frequencies. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the colony ship Horizon's Edge calling any survivors on Luna. We're human, we're friendly, and we're here to help. Please respond. Static filled the bridge for 10 long seconds. Then a voice, rough and tired, came through the speakers. Horizon's Edge, this is General Carl Bennett, Earth Defense Command. I'll be damned. We thought everyone out system was lost. How many of you are there? 847 souls, General. We're coming down. Where can we land? Tycho Base Pad 7 is still intact. I'll have people waiting. Bennett out. 3 hours later, Jake stood in a cramped bunker 3 kilometers beneath the lunar surface, staring at a man who looked like he had been to hell and back. General Carl Bennett was in his 60s. His gray hair buzzed short, his uniform dirty and torn. But his eyes were sharp and alert. Around him, 200 other survivors worked at makeshift stations keeping their underground refuge alive. We saw it all from up here, Bennett said, his voice hollow. Every strike, every city burning. We tried to help, but the Varkesh ships destroyed our defense platforms in the first 5 minutes. After that, all we could do was watch Earth die. Jake sat down heavily in a metal chair. How many survivors are on Earth itself? Best estimate? About 1.2 billion. They're scattered in bunkers, underground facilities, remote locations that weren't primary targets. We've been trying to coordinate them, but communications are difficult. The Varkesh destroyed most of our satellite infrastructure. 1.2 billion out of 11.2, Jake said quietly. 10 billion dead. 10 billion murdered, Bennett corrected. The Varkesh didn't attack military targets first. They went straight for population centers. They wanted to kill as many of us as possible, as quickly as possible. It was genocide, pure and simple. Amy Rodriguez, who had accompanied Jake to the surface, pulled up a data pad. General, I've analyzed the weapons they used. Plasma bombardment on a scale I've never seen. Each of their capital ships has the firepower to crack a planet. How do we fight something like that? Bennett smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Come with me. I want to show you something. He led them deeper into the bunker complex through tunnels that seemed to go on forever. Finally, they emerged into a massive cavern that had been converted into a command center. Dozens of screens covered the walls, showing data streams and tactical displays. But what caught Jake's attention was the woman working at the central console. This is Dr. Helen Foster, Bennett said. She's the reason we're not completely helpless. Helen looked up from her work. She was in her 40s with dark circles under her eyes and graying hair pulled back in a ponytail. Captain Morrison, I've heard about your survey mission. You picked a hell of a time to come home. Dr. Foster was working at a black site research facility in the asteroid belt when the attack happened, Bennett explained. She's been coordinating with the survivors to take stock of our remaining assets. Assets? Jake asked. What assets? The Varkesh destroyed our fleet. They destroyed the fleet we showed them, Helen corrected. But humanity has been paranoid about first contact for a long time. We've been building contingencies, hidden shipyards in the outer system, experimental weapons platforms, research stations using stealth technology that makes them invisible to standard sensors. The Varkesh found and destroyed everything obvious. They never found the secret stuff. Jake felt his heart rate increase. How much are we talking about? Helen pulled up a star map on the main screen. Red dots appeared throughout the solar system, concentrated in the asteroid belt and the outer planets. 47 hidden facilities. Most of them are automated or lightly staffed. Before the attack, they were pet projects, experimental programs, the kind of thing that gets funding but never sees actual combat. Now they're all we have. Show me what we're working with, Jake said. For the next hour, Helen walked him through humanity's secret arsenal. There were prototype warships with experimental engines, weapon platforms that used technology decades ahead of anything in the public fleet, manufacturing facilities built into asteroids capable of producing ships and weapons given enough time and resources. It wasn't much compared to the Varkesh military might, but it was more than nothing. The problem is coordination and time, Bennett said. The Varkesh said they'll be back in 20 years to claim Earth and enslave whatever population remains. That gives us 20 years to prepare. 20 years to turn this scattered resistance into something that can actually fight back. 20 years, Jake repeated. He thought about the 10 billion dead. 20 years felt like forever and no time at all. What do you need from me and my crew? Everything, Bennett said bluntly. Your ship has fabrication facilities for colony construction. We need those converted to military production. Your crew has engineers, scientists, pilots. We need them trained as soldiers. Captain, I'm not going to lie to you. The next 20 years are going to be hard. We're going to work every day, knowing that the people who killed 10 billion of us are out there living their lives thinking they've won. Jake stood up straighter. My crew and I are in. Whatever you need, you have it, but I want something in return. Name it. When those 20 years are up, when we're ready to fight back, I want to be there. I want to look the Varkesh in their alien eyes and make them understand what they've done. I want them to know fear. Bennett extended his hand. Deal. Welcome to the Resistance, Captain. The years that followed were the hardest of Jake's life. The survivors scattered throughout the solar system came together with a single purpose. They called themselves the Terran Resistance. And their goal was simple: prepare for the Varkesh return and make the aliens regret everything. Jake's ship, the Horizon's Edge, was torn apart and rebuilt as a mobile construction platform. His crew scattered to different assignments. Chris Palmer went to pilot training, learning to fly the new stealth fighters that Helen's team was developing. Linda Hayes joined the intelligence division, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather about the Varkesh. Amy Rodriguez worked with Helen on weapons research. Jake himself was promoted to admiral and given command of the growing fleet. It started with just a handful of experimental ships, but as the years passed, the hidden shipyards churned out more and more vessels. Each one was built with a singular purpose: to kill Varkesh. The construction took place in the shadows of the asteroid belt, where sensors couldn't easily detect them. Engineer Danny Price, a survivor from one of the Mars colonies, led the shipbuilding effort. He worked 18-hour days, pushing himself and his teams to their limits. Every ship that came off the production line was a small victory, a step closer to revenge. On Earth, the survivors began to rebuild. Not the cities, those were too damaged and too visible. Instead, they went underground, creating vast complexes beneath the surface. General Bennett coordinated the effort, turning scattered refugee camps into organized military bases. The survivors trained. They learned to fight, and they remembered. Every child born in those years grew up hearing about the 10 billion. They learned the names of the dead cities. They were shown footage of the attack, of Earth burning. It was brutal, but Bennett insisted it was necessary. If we forget, he said, if we let ourselves become soft again, then the 10 billion died for nothing. In the 10th year, Helen Foster made a breakthrough. She had been working on theoretical physics, studying something called quantum field manipulation. It was dangerous research, the kind that most scientists said was impossible. But Helen kept pushing, kept testing, kept trying. And one day she succeeded. I call it the Cascade Drive, she explained to Jake in her laboratory deep beneath the lunar surface. It's a weapon that manipulates a star's quantum field, causing a chain reaction in the core. Given enough time, it can trigger a supernova. Jake stared at the device on the workbench. It was small, no bigger than a cargo container. You're talking about destroying entire solar systems. Yes, Helen said flatly. I am. The Varkesh taught us that mercy is weakness. They showed us what total war looks like. If we're going to survive, if we're going to make sure they never threaten humanity again, we need to be willing to do the unthinkable. How long would it take? To destroy a star? Depends on the star's size and composition. Somewhere between 12 and 48 hours. Plenty of time for the reaction to become irreversible, but not enough time for a meaningful evacuation of inhabited planets. Jake felt sick to his stomach. You're talking about genocide. I'm talking about survival, Helen corrected. The Varkesh have an empire spanning 42 systems. They have hundreds of billions of citizens. If 18 years after the attack, humanity was ready. Jake Morrison stood in the war room beneath the lunar surface, surrounded by his top officers and looking at a holographic display of known space. Red markers indicated Varkesh-controlled systems. There were 42 of them, spanning hundreds of light years. Somewhere in that empire were the aliens who had killed 10 billion humans. Intelligence report, Jake said, nodding to Pete Jackson. The intelligence officer had spent the last 18 years gathering every scrap of information about the Varkesh they could find. He knew their language, their culture, their military doctrine. He probably knew more about them than most Varkesh did. Pete activated his console, and the display zoomed in on a particular system. This is Rigel 7, a Varkesh military outpost on the edge of their territory. According to the data we've intercepted, this is the base that coordinated the attack on Earth. The commander here, a Varkesh called Drexus, personally oversaw the bombardment. Jake felt his jaw tighten. Drexus. He committed the name to memory. What are we looking at in terms of defenses? Significant but not overwhelming. 30 warships, orbital defense platforms, ground installations. Standard Varkesh military setup. They're not expecting an attack. Why would they? They've been the dominant military power in this region for centuries. Good, Jake said. Overconfidence will make them sloppy. Sophie, you'll lead the assault. I want that base reduced to atoms. No survivors. No mercy. Commander Sophie Carter nodded. She was young, only 35, but she had grown up in the Resistance. She had been a teenager when Earth burned, and that fire had never left her eyes. Understood, Admiral. When do we leave? 72 hours. That gives us time for final preparations and mission briefings. The Varkesh said they'd return to Earth in 20 years. We're not waiting. We're bringing the fight to them. General Bennett, who had aged considerably in the past 18 years, cleared his throat. Admiral, once we strike, there's no going back. The Varkesh will know humanity survived. They'll know we're coming for them. Good, Jake said coldly. I want them to know. I want them to be afraid. They taught us that terror is an effective weapon. Time to return the lesson. 3 days later, the Terran Vengeance fleet departed from its hidden bases. 20 ships, including the Earthborn Vengeance, slipped through the void using stealth technology that made them nearly invisible. They traveled for 2 weeks, jumping through unmapped routes that Pete's intelligence division had identified. Routes the Varkesh didn't know about. Sophie stood on the bridge of her ship, the Silent Fury, reviewing the attack plan for the 100th time. Her second-in-command, a veteran pilot named Ryan Cooper, stood beside her. Nervous? Ryan asked. Terrified, Sophie admitted. But I've been waiting for this day since I was 17 years old. Since I watched the video of my parents' city burning. The fear doesn't matter. What matters is making them pay. They'll pay, Ryan assured her. We're going to hit them so hard they won't know what happened. The fleet emerged from their final jump just outside the Rigel 7 system. They hung in the darkness of space, their stealth systems active, invisible to Varkesh sensors. Through the view screen, Sophie could see the distant glow of the system's star. Somewhere in there was the base that had murdered 10 billion people. All ships, this is Commander Carter. Sound off. One by one, the ship commanders reported ready status. 20 human warships crewed by 5,000 people who had lost everything. They were the tip of humanity's spear, and they were about to strike. Admiral Morrison has authorized weapons free, Sophie said. You all know the mission. You all know what they did to us. No warnings, no surrender, no mercy. Today we teach the Varkesh what happens when you try to destroy humanity. All ships engage stealth approach. Target the base. Let's make our ancestors proud. The fleet moved forward like ghosts in the night. The Varkesh sensors never detected them. Why would they? They were relaxed, comfortable, certain that they were the predators and everyone else was prey. They were about to learn the truth. Sophie's ship reached firing range first. Through her targeting computer, she could see Varkesh vessels docked at the station. Thousands of aliens going about their daily routines, never suspecting that death had come calling. She thought about her parents, her little brother, her friends from school, all dead because these creatures decided humanity needed to be taught a lesson. Her finger hovered over the firing control. For Earth, she whispered, fire everything. The Silent Fury dropped its stealth and unleashed hell. Plasma torpedoes streaked through space, slamming into Varkesh ships before they could raise shields. Particle beams cut through station modules like knives through paper. And then the rest of the fleet decloaked and joined the attack. The Varkesh base dissolved into chaos. Alarms screamed. Ships tried to launch but were destroyed before their engines could warm up. Defense platforms attempted to return fire, but the human ships moved with a precision and fury that the Varkesh had never encountered. This wasn't a military engagement. This was an execution. Commander Drexus, the Varkesh who had overseen Earth's destruction, died when a human missile hit his command center. He had 3 seconds to realize he was under attack before the explosion vaporized him. He never knew why humanity had come. He never got a chance to surrender. He got exactly what he had given Earth: sudden, brutal death. 17 minutes after the attack began, it was over. The Varkesh base was debris. Every ship destroyed. Every structure shattered. The humans had taken no damage. They hung in space, victorious, staring at the ruins of their enemy's stronghold. All ships. Confirm status, Sophie ordered, her voice shaking slightly. Silent Fury operational. No damage. Earthborn Vengeance operational. All systems green. Shadow Strike operational. Minimal power drain. One by one, the reports came in. 20 ships. 0 casualties. Total destruction of the enemy. It was a perfect military victory, so why didn't it feel like enough? Ryan stepped up beside Sophie. First blood to humanity. First blood, Sophie repeated. But not the last. Not by a long shot. Back in the Lunar Command Center, Jake received the report and allowed himself a small smile. It was the first genuine smile he'd had in 18 years. Transmit the message. All frequencies. Make sure every species in the galaxy hears it. Linda Hayes, now heading the Resistance's Communications Division, nodded and began broadcasting. Jake had written the message himself, laboring over every word. It needed to be perfect. It needed to make the Varkesh understand what they had awakened. The message went out across known space, riding on every wavelength impossible to ignore. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Resistance. 18 years ago, the Varkesh sovereignty attacked Earth. They destroyed our cities. They murdered 10 billion of our people. They thought they were showing the galaxy their power. They thought they were making an example of what happens to species that refuse to kneel. They were wrong. We are the survivors. We are the ones who remember. We are the billion who refuse to die. And we are coming for you. To the Varkesh sovereignty, you erase 10 billion humans. We will erase every trace of your empire from the galaxy. Your worlds will burn. Your ships will be destroyed. Your people will know the same terror that ours knew. This is not a war. This is justice. This is vengeance. This is extinction. To the other species in the galaxy, stay out of our way. This is between humanity and the Varkesh. Any species that aids them, any government that harbors them, any world that gives them sanctuary will be considered our enemy. We have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. To humanity, wherever you are, whatever bunker or colony or ship you're hiding in, hold on. We're coming home, and we're bringing hell with us. The message ended. In the silence that followed, Jake imagined the reaction across the galaxy. Fear, confusion, disbelief. Good. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them realize that humanity wasn't going to quietly disappear. On Varkesh Prime, the homeworld of the Varkesh sovereignty, Overlord Zerthak received the message and the report of the Rigel 7 base's destruction. He sat in his throne room surrounded by his advisors and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Concern. How many ships did the humans use? He asked. 20, Supreme One, his military advisor replied. They destroyed a military base that should have required a fleet of hundreds to overcome. Their technology is advanced. Their tactics are aggressive. And they clearly have no interest in negotiation. Zerthak considered this. The Varkesh had crushed hundreds of species over their empire's long history. Some fought back initially, but they always surrendered eventually. The humans, though, didn't seem interested in surrender. They seemed interested in revenge. Summon War Commander Threxus, Zerthak ordered. Give him command of the Grand Fleet. 5,000 ships should be more than enough to deal with whatever the humans have scraped together. Supreme One, perhaps we should attempt communication. The humans are clearly more resilient than we anticipated. No, Zerthak said firmly. We made our decision 18 years ago. The humans were to be an example, a warning to other species. If we show weakness now, if we negotiate with them after they attacked us, it will embolden every conquered species in our empire. We will hunt down T. The Helix Nebula was beautiful in a deadly sort of way. Swirling clouds of gas and dust painted space in shades of blue and purple, lit by the dying star at its center. It was also the perfect place for an ambush. Sensors couldn't see through the thick gas. Communications were scattered by radiation. And hidden in those clouds were thousands of weapons platforms that humanity had been building for years. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earthborn Vengeance, watching the Varkesh Grand Fleet approach. 5,000 ships moving in a formation that spoke of absolute confidence. They thought they were chasing a broken enemy. They thought this would be an easy victory. All platforms report ready, Admiral, Pete Jackson said from Tactical. The Varkesh are right where we want them. Hold position, Jake ordered. Let them get deep into the nebula. Let them think they have us cornered. Sophie, status on your wings. Commander Carter's voice came through clear. Starfighter squadrons in position, Admiral. We're hidden in the gas clouds. They'll never see us until it's too late. Good. Everyone remember we only get one shot at this. Make it count. War Commander Threxus sat in his command chair, pleased with how the pursuit was going. The humans had fled before his fleet like scared children. Now they were trapped in this nebula with nowhere to run. He would destroy them all, return to Varkesh Prime victorious, and receive the honors he deserved. Supreme Commander, sensors are having difficulty penetrating the gas clouds, his sensor officer reported. It doesn't matter, Threxus said dismissively. The humans are in there somewhere. Deploy the fleet in a search pattern. When we find them, we destroy them. Simple. But as his fleet spread out through the nebula, something unexpected happened. His ships began disappearing. First one, then another, then dozens at a time. Ships would simply vanish from sensors, their last transmissions cut off mid-word. What's happening? Threxus demanded. Unknown, Supreme Commander. The nebula is interfering with our sensors. We're detecting weapons fire but can't identify the source. We've lost over 200 ships in the last 3 minutes. Threxus felt the first stirring of fear. All ships, defensive formation. Activate shields. Find those weapons. But the humans had spent years preparing this trap. Hidden throughout the nebula were automated platforms, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a Varkesh warship. They were programmed to fire, then go dark, then relocate. The Varkesh couldn't hit what they couldn't see. Now, Jake said quietly. Sophie Carter gave the order to her starfighter wings. All units, engage! From the clouds emerged hundreds of human fighters, small and fast, invisible to Varkesh sensors until they opened fire. They swarmed the larger Varkesh ships like angry insects, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. The Varkesh tried to fight back, but their heavy weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not these tiny agile craft. Ryan Cooper led his squadron through the chaos, his fighter dancing between enemy ships. He locked onto a Varkesh cruiser and fired a full spread of missiles. The cruiser's shields flared and failed, and the missiles tore through its hull. One less enemy ship. One small payment on a very large debt. This is for Earth, he shouted over the squadron channel. His pilots echoed the cry as they pressed their attack. The Varkesh fleet, so confident just minutes before, was dissolving into panic. Ships collided with each other, trying to evade the hidden weapons. Commanders shouted conflicting orders. The tight military discipline that had conquered dozens of worlds crumbled under the relentless human assault. Supreme Commander, we must retreat, Threxus's second officer said. We're losing ships faster than we can count. No, Threxus roared. We outnumber them. We have superior technology. We cannot lose to these primitives. But even as he spoke, a human torpedo slammed into his flagship's port side. The explosion ripped through 3 decks, killing hundreds of Varkesh crew. Alarms screamed. His ship was dying. All ships retreat. Fall back to the nebula edge, Threxus finally ordered, his pride giving way to survival instinct. But Jake had anticipated this. As the Varkesh fleet tried to withdraw, the human warships decloaked at the nebula's exit points. 20 ships against thousands seemed like suicide. But these 20 ships had been built for one purpose, to kill Varkesh. And they were very, very good at it. All ships weapons free, Jake commanded. Show them what happens when humans fight for survival. The Earthborn Vengeance opened fire with everything it had. Plasma cannons that could crack a planet's crust. Missile pods that could saturate an entire sector of space. Particle beams that could cut through Varkesh shields like they weren't even there. The other human ships matched his fury. The battle raged for 6 hours. By the end, 800 Varkesh ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest fled in disorder, their formations broken, their confidence shattered. The humans had lost 3 fighters and taken minor damage to 2 frigates. It wasn't just a victory, it was a massacre. Threxus barely escaped with his life, his flagship limping away with half its systems offline. As he watched the nebula shrink behind him, filled with the wreckage of his fleet, he realized something terrifying. The humans weren't trying to survive. They were trying to win, and they might actually do it. Back in the Lunar Command Center, General Bennett watched the battle reports with grim satisfaction. We hurt them badly today. 800 ships destroyed. That's the largest military defeat the Varkesh have suffered in their history. It's not enough, Jake said, his voice hard. They still have over 4,000 ships left. More importantly, they still have their homeworlds, their colonies, their people living safe and comfortable lives while our Earth is a burned ruin. Helen Foster entered the room, carrying a datapad. She looked tired and old beyond her years. 18 years of working on weapons of mass destruction had taken their toll. Admiral, the Cascade Drive is ready for deployment. We've built 12 units. Each one is capable of triggering a supernova in a star system. Jake stared at the datapad showing the weapon specifications. If we use these, we'll be killing billions of Varkesh civilians, women, children, beings who had nothing to do with the attack on Earth. And if we don't use them, Helen said quietly, we risk losing. The Varkesh have the numbers advantage. They have industrial capacity across 42 systems. Even after today's victory, they can replace those losses within a year. We can't. Every ship we lose, every person who dies, we can't replace. We're fighting a war of extinction, Admiral. We use every weapon we have or we lose. General Bennett nodded. I agree with Dr. Foster. The Varkesh showed us the rules of this game 18 years ago. Total war, no mercy, no quarter. We didn't start this, but by God, we're going to finish it. Jake walked to the window overlooking the scarred surface of the moon. Beyond it, he could see Earth still wounded from the attack. 10 billion dead. 10 billion people who never got to vote on whether humanity should seek revenge or forgiveness. He thought about what they would want and realized he couldn't know. The dead don't speak, but the living do. And the living had a right to survive. Target their colony worlds, Jake said finally. Not the homeworld, not yet. We start with their outer colonies. We show them what it feels like to lose billions. We give them a chance to surrender. If they refuse, we keep going until there's nothing left of their empire. Admiral, Lisa Grant said carefully, once we do this, we cross a line. We become what they are. We become killers of billions. We already crossed that line the day we decided to fight back, Jake replied. The Varkesh made us into this. They wanted to show the galaxy what happens when you cross them. Now we show the galaxy what happens when you try to destroy humanity. Sometimes the monsters are necessary. Sometimes being good isn't enough to survive. Sometimes you have to be willing to do terrible things to protect what matters. Over the next 3 months, the human fleet went on the offensive. Captain Ryan Cooper commanded the Silent Fury on its grim mission to the Varkesh colony world of Tarkis III. 6 billion Varkesh lived there, farming and mining and raising families. They were civilians mostly. They had nothing to do with Earth's destruction. Ryan tried not to think about that as he deployed the Cascade Drive near the system's star. It was a simple device, really. Set it, activate it, and leave. The star would do the rest. He had 14 hours before the reaction became irreversible. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the planet, his communications officer said. They're asking why we're here. They're saying they're civilians. They're begging us not to hurt them. Ryan closed his eyes. He thought about Earth, about the cities that burned, about the civilians who begged and died anyway. The Varkesh had shown no mercy then. They had given no warnings. Block the transmissions, Ryan said quietly. And get us out of here. The Silent Fury jumped away. Behind it, the star began to destabilize. The Varkesh on Tarkis III had hours to realize what was happening, to panic, to try to evacuate. But there was no time, no escape. The star went supernova and 6 billion lives were extinguished in fire. 4 more colony worlds followed. Each one was a horror. Each one was necessary. Or at least that's what Ryan told himself as he watched the stars explode. The galaxy took notice. Other species, the ones who had stayed neutral. Varkesh Prime hung in space like a jewel, the homeworld of an empire that had stood for 1,000 years. 14 billion Varkesh lived on its surface in gleaming cities and peaceful countryside. Most of them had never even heard of Earth until the war started. Now they huddled in their homes, watching their sky and waiting for death to arrive. Jake Morrison's fleet assembled at the edge of the system. 150 ships now, reinforced by vessels from the freed species who had joined humanity's cause. The Kelthani, who had suffered under Varkesh rule for centuries, fought alongside them. The Zix contributed their expertise in weapons technology. The Morphidians provided intelligence and support. Together, they formed an armada bent on one purpose, the complete destruction of the Varkesh sovereignty. Admiral, the Varkesh Home Defense Fleet is deploying, Pete Jackson reported. 2,000 ships. Everything they have left. They're going to make their final stand here. Jake studied the tactical display. 2,000 ships protecting their homeworld against his 150. In any normal battle, those odds would be suicidal. But this wasn't a normal battle. The humans had allies now, and they had weapons the Varkesh couldn't match. All ships prepare for engagement. Sophie, your fighters will screen our advance. Ryan, your bombers will target their capital ships. General Bennett is transmitting final coordinates from Earth. Every survivor is watching. Let's make sure we finish this. On Varkesh Prime, Overlord Zerthak stood in his command center, surrounded by his remaining military leaders. He looked older than his years, worn down by watching his empire die system by system. 85 billion Varkesh were dead across the colony worlds. His people had learned terror. They had learned helplessness. They had learned what it felt like to be on the receiving end of total war. Can we win? He asked his war council. The silence that followed was answer enough. Finally, his oldest advisor spoke. No, Supreme One, we cannot. The humans and their allies outnumber us in ships, and their technology is superior. Our only hope is that they will show mercy if we fight hard enough to earn their respect. The humans don't do mercy, Zerthak said bitterly. We made sure of that when we destroyed Earth. We thought we were showing strength. Instead, we created an enemy that won't stop until we're extinct. Then what do? Zerthak looked at the display showing the approaching human fleet. We fight. We die with honor, and we pray that history remembers we tried to surrender, even though they refused to listen. The battle for Varkesh Prime began at dawn. The human fleet drove forward with brutal efficiency, their weapons tearing through Varkesh shields like paper. Sophie Carter led her starfighter wings through the enemy formations, her pilots flying with a precision born from 18 years of practice and rage. Commander Ryan Cooper targeted the Varkesh flagship personally. His bomber, loaded with heavy penetrator missiles, weaved through defensive fire that would have destroyed a lesser pilot. He thought about Earth as he lined up his shot. He thought about the cities that burned. He thought about the 10 billion who never got a chance to fight back. This one's for home, he whispered, and launched his entire payload. The missiles streaked through space and slammed into the Varkesh flagship's command section. The explosion was tremendous, ripping the massive ship in half. Overlord Zerthak died in that blast, never knowing if his sacrifice meant anything. Around his dying ship, the Varkesh defense fleet began to crumble. The battle raged for 8 hours. The Varkesh fought with desperate courage, knowing they were defending their homeworld and everything they held dear. But courage wasn't enough against humanity's cold fury. One by one, the Varkesh ships fell. The wreckage formed a ring around their planet, a monument to their defeat. When the last Varkesh warship was destroyed, Jake's fleet held position in orbit. Below them, 14 billion civilians waited for judgment. The planetary shields were down. The defense platforms were destroyed. Varkesh Prime lay helpless before the human fleet. Admiral, we're receiving thousands of transmissions from the surface, Linda Hayes reported. Surrender offers, pleas for mercy, offers of reparations. They're saying their leadership is dead and they want peace. Jake stared at the planet on his view screen. 14 billion lives, civilians, families, children who had nothing to do with the attack on Earth. He thought about the line he had crossed, destroying the colony worlds. 30 billion dead by his orders. Could he order 14 billion more? Dr. Helen Foster's face appeared on a communication screen. She was aboard one of the support ships, ready to deploy the Cascade drive if ordered. Admiral, the weapon is ready. One word from you and Varkesh Prime's star will go supernova within 12 hours. Wait, Jake said. He opened a channel to his senior staff. I want opinions. All of you. Do we destroy this world or do we show mercy? General Bennett spoke first. Mercy is weakness. The Varkesh taught us that. If we let them live, we risk them rebuilding and attacking us again in the future. The only way to guarantee humanity's safety is to finish what we started. We've killed 85 billion of them, Commander Carter argued. Their empire is broken. Their military is destroyed. If we exterminate their entire species, we become exactly what we're fighting against. We become genocidal monsters. We already are monsters, Pete Jackson said quietly. The question is whether being monsters served its purpose. Have we made our point? Will the galaxy remember not to threaten humanity? Or do we need to destroy Varkesh Prime to complete the lesson? Jake listened to them debate, feeling the weight of 14 billion lives in his hands. He thought about Admiral Thompson's final message from Earth. Make them pay. Make them regret. But did that mean total extinction? Did justice require the death of every last Varkesh? He thought about the 10 billion humans who died, about Earth burning, about the survivors who had lived in bunkers for 18 years, their lives defined by loss and rage. What would they want? Would they demand every Varkesh die? Or would they want humanity to be better than their enemies? Dr. Foster, Jake said finally. Stand down the Cascade Drive. We're not destroying this planet. The bridge went silent. Helen's face showed surprise. Admiral, are you certain? This is our chance to end the Varkesh forever. I'm certain, Jake said. We came here for justice, not genocide. The Varkesh sovereignty is destroyed. Their empire is broken. Their military is eliminated. 85 billion of them are dead. That's enough. We've made our point to the galaxy. But Admiral, General Bennett protested, if we show weakness now. This isn't weakness, Jake interrupted. This is strength. It takes no courage to exterminate a helpless enemy. Any species can do that. The Varkesh proved it when they attacked Earth. But it takes real strength to stop, to choose mercy when you have the power to destroy. That's what separates us from them. That's what makes us better. He opened a channel to the surface of Varkesh Prime. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Terran Fleet. Your empire is destroyed. Your military is eliminated. 85 billion of your people are dead across your former colonies. This is the price of genocide. This is what happens when you try to destroy humanity. But unlike you, we're choosing to stop. The 14 billion civilians on your homeworld will live. Consider this mercy you didn't earn and don't deserve. But remember it. Tell your children and your children's children what happened when the Varkesh sovereignty tried to erase humanity. Tell them about the 10 billion we lost and the price you paid for taking them from us. If any Varkesh ever threatens humanity again, if any of your species ever raises a hand against us, we will return, and next time there will be no mercy, no hesitation. We will burn every Varkesh world until nothing remains but ashes and memories. This is your only warning. Live in peace or die as your empire died. The transmission ended. Jake turned to his crew. All ships returned to Sol system. We're going home. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy. The Varkesh sovereignty, which had dominated the region for a millennium, was gone. The humans, written off as destroyed, had not only survived but had defeated an empire. The reaction was mixed. Some species celebrated, especially those who had suffered under Varkesh rule. Others were terrified. Humanity had demonstrated a capacity for violence that shocked the galactic community. They had killed 85 billion beings in a calculated campaign of revenge. Ambassador Kelwin of the Treeland Council sent another message. This time his tone was different. Admiral Morrison, the Galactic Assembly wishes to meet with you. There are concerns about humanity's methods and your future intentions. Jake's response was delivered in person. When the human fleet arrived at the Assembly's neutral station, he stood before representatives of 40 species, feeling their judgment and their fear. You condemn us, Jake said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. You look at what we did to the Varkesh and you're horrified. You call us barbarians, monsters, genocidal killers. And you're right. We are all of those things. We became exactly what we needed to be to survive. But where were you when Earth burned? When 10 billion of us died in 6 hours? When the Varkesh committed genocide against humanity? You did nothing. You said nothing. You stood by and watched because it wasn't your problem.